Hello everyone, I'm nekokittu, and welcome to episode 3 of my Let's Build a Farm building series. In the last episode we did quite a bit. We got a bunch of fields in, including the flower one, a whole custom tree, and to finish it off, we got this crystal in, so we can do some magic. But mainly it's just putting mushrooms everywhere, but also magic. Let's go. So to start off our magical little mushroom spreader, I think we should do some basic ones. And I don't mean basic ones by I'm going to build a mushroom bigger than most people's houses. I do mean basic. It's 2 blocks. Now watch real closely, guys, because if you blink you'll miss it. This is really in-depth building advice. You got to stick real close and get this right into your little noggin, okay? You watching? Bam, mushroom. In all seriousness though, that is it. This is the most basic mushroom you could ever make. And of course you can swap it for the brown one if you want. You know, you can go funky with it and put some glazed terracotta down, but I like the red one. It's just, it looks like a mushroom, you know? And the nice thing about these is they're also a light source because end rods emit light. The downside is you have to go to the end and farm end rods. That's not a problem for me, I'm in creative. With that, all I'm going to do is put a few of these around just to kind of brighten the place up with some mushroom magic. And also brighten the place up with some actual light. Let's go. There. I think that's a good amount for now. I mean, later on when I do more stuff up and around and definitely the house, I'll put more in as we go, but I think this gives you the idea. Sometimes it's really nice to just have something really simple. You don't need a big flashy mushroom in order to make the place look nice. However, I am now going to show you how to make a big flashy mushroom. And I never said I wouldn't, I just said sometimes it's nice not to. Now the question is, how big of a mushroom are we feeling? Because I got some big shrooms. Now don't focus on anything other than the mushrooms. This place isn't real. As I said in episode 1, it's not real, but these are the mushrooms I'm talking about. When you're building organics, you have to find a reference image, and this is an oyster mushroom. These are delicious. And also kind of cute. These little ones here are just kind of your basic round caps, but I made them look a bit more mushroomy because round caps are just brown, and that's boring on a mountain. And these are more like bonnet mushrooms, so they're quite top heavy and they tend to lean. So yeah, if you are building organics, always find a reference image. So of course for this one, we can't have any of those big oyster mushrooms, because actually, no, it would look cool there, but I feel like I want the manor house here. I want that to be the centerpiece. So I don't want any other distractions. What I do want is a few of the littler ones, the round caps and the bonnets. Maybe just around the place, just to stop this hillside looking so hillsidey. Now of course the first thing you're going to need is your colour palette. I've gone with the mushroom stem and smooth quartz for the actual stem of the mushroom, and then with the outer ring of the mushroom I'm going with the warped wood, and of course blue mushroom cyan concrete. You can use any other blue, I think it'll stand out quite a bit more. Looking at this is definitely a blank spot, and unless I built like quite a tall tree here or another building here, this would be empty. So this perfect spot for a mushroom. Whenever you're building, you have to sometimes take a step back and look for bold spots. So there is a bold spot, there is a bold spot, this is a bold spot, whereas these are quite filled in. Even though this tree is quite small, it still occupies that area. But you also want to think about the height. Buildings are usually a good indicator for your top height. Anything above this point, we don't really want to catch the eye. Anything at like a similar height to the roof would be great for eye catching, or even like here, just a little bit above it. And then anything on the floor, we just want to be sort of like an accompaniment. So like the vegetation, the water, it all just adds to the piece. And of course this will definitely come into play when we build the manor house, which is supposed to be a big centerpiece. So the manor house would probably come to about here, maybe taller, and anything above the manor house should be quite desaturated, not very colourful. But we'll get to that when we build the manor house. Right now, we're mushrooming, and I'm getting distracted. So with your handy reference image, you just start placing blocks. Always start with a good stem, similar to the tree. Anytime you're building anything organic that has structure in like a stem, you always build the stem first. So for this, I'm wanting it to come out maybe to about here. So I'm going to build a slightly curved stem. And then you just put a slightly skew width dome on top of it. It doesn't have to be perfectly symmetrical because it's organic. So something like this shape probably would do quite nice. And then we build up and close it off at the top, like this. And that gives you a sort of good mushroom shape to work with. Of course, on a build this small, you're not really going to get a lot of detail, so it's all in the slabs and stairs. So just something like this gives a pretty accurate mushroom shape. Then I would go in with a white block like smooth quartz or white concrete just to add these iconic mushroom spots. And there you have a very simple mushroom. If I was building something bigger and fancier, probably would make it a bit more varied, but this is good for a small mushroom. And it just adds something to that space there. I also just like to go under with some shroom lights and trapdoors of whatever the base wood you've used, and it just gives the mushrooms sort of a nice underglow. And with that, I'm just gonna go put a few of these little mushrooms everywhere using exactly the same concept, just stem, thing on top, bit of wood, add the white, and that should hopefully make this place look a little more colourful. And this is how she's looking so far. I've put in a few of these little mushrooms here and there. I've added one of the tilty mushrooms just because I like them. And I think until I get more in, I can't really add more mushrooms. I'm also thinking maybe I move this little one up. I definitely want something up here, but I feel like this should be higher because it's on the same level as this one and very similar to this one. So I definitely need another variation in height. But building is mostly trial and error, so that's what we do here. We try, we fail. We try again, we don't fail. Sometimes we do fail again, and we gotta try again. But it's fine. That's just how building be. Before I work on any more of the little details, I'm gonna put a few more farm buildings in. I'm feeling like here a stable because it's on the main path, and this is like the sort of exit area. And it just makes sense for a stable to be near the exit. And over here, I want some sort of grain production, which would mean adding a windmill. And windmills wouldn't do great inside a crater, so it would have to go up on top of the crater somewhere. There would be a good spot for a windmill. And then if we have sort of like a path coming down, a little grain production area, and then carts would go to and from, and then the horses are here. Yeah, that makes sense. And that leaves this space open for the manor house, of course. Since we're not working with a lot of space here, I'm going to start here. Smaller buildings take less time. If we're just wanting something as simple as a stable, we really just want a place for the horses to go and a place for like hay to be stored. So if we get like a small, maybe L-shaped building and then an attached little stable, that shouldn't be too hard to fit into the space. Now I'm going to use a similar block palette to this. I'm going to take the dark oak and the mud. I'm going to stick with the dark oak as the framing block. And it's exactly the same as it was in episode 1. You just start with the framework like this, and then we move on to adding the walls in, and then we just add the roof, fill in the gaps, and you've got a house. This is more like a working farm building instead of one where someone lives in. I would like this to have more of a thatched roof. The two ways that I usually do this are just hay bales. Classic. One of the problems with hay bales, because there are a few, is that you're going to have bits that stick out like this, because if I then put this block, it goes like this, and if I put this back, it shows through. But luckily, they recently introduced a solution. Bamboo. Because bamboo has stairs and slabs. So we can fill in a pretty good roof. Sort of like this. Now I've made this a little bit less flat like this one, because someone lives here, they're not going to want the roof to sink in. whereas this is more like a storage room. It's going to be less maintained. It's still going to have a roof, but it's not going to be as pretty. The other nice thing about bamboo is that they have these mosaics that you can mix and match in to give the roof a little bit more texture. Because when you're building roofs, if you can, so like this one here, it's just all one color, but I don't really have a good texture block for the mangrove. Whereas here, the bamboo has 2 variation blocks, so you can use both of them. And it just gives this sort of messy looking roof. And then in similar fashion to the farmhouse, you add a little bit of detail. If you don't have enough room on a house to build an entire separator like this one, signs are an alright alternative. Now this is a hay loft, so of course I filled it with hay, put a little lantern in there so you can see, and I've put these trapdoors as sort of windows. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a grindstone with some chain coming off of it, another one here with a barrel. And this sort of gives like a pulley system that would be used to pull hay up and down into the loft. Now this definitely looks better on a bigger scale, and I will show that later on, but I think for this little small build it kind of fits. And now to add the actual stable bit. All I'm going to do here is just put sort of like an awning with 2 compartments for 2 horses. A sort of nice way to do an awning is a couple of fences, and then just put some campfires on top, like so. And you can give them a bit more structure by putting gates on the bottom of the fires. It just gives sort of like a small gazebo. Of course you can add like leaves and glowberries, whatever you're really feeling, just to make it feel a bit more grounded. And with that little concept, I'm going to put on a little place for the horses. And with the little stable put in, I've just added some hay bales, changed the floor to coarse dirt, and put in a little water trough with access to the building here for the horses. Of course, we would need to go find some horses to put in it, but for now it can stay empty, using exactly the same concept as this, and of course all the things we learned in episode 1. I'm going to build sort of like a little square here of just sort of like a storage barn and a silo, and then a path just stopping here because then I can connect it to the windmill, what I'm hoping will be up here. And we've got ourselves a pretty basic barn. I used the same pulley system and I also did it on this. It's just a nice looking thing. And I've made this little cart. It's not great, and I wish there were more like wheel options. Mangrove trapdoors do look kind of little like square wheels. So if you just imagine they rolled like little square wheels. I also during the building process didn't really like the bamboo as this wood texture, so I went ahead and I changed it. Even though it looked okay on the smaller build, it didn't look too good. It was too bright on the bigger build. But that's a process that you have to go through when you're building. Sometimes things don't look right first time and you have to go back and change them. I've put some coarse dirt around just to kind of show areas where people would like walk. So especially here where there's a lot of probably foot traffic for the grain, the cart of course, and under here. I've added a few more mushrooms. I've left this space open of course. And I think the last thing we're going to do is build a windmill and the way up. Now again, this follows pretty much the same method used to build all of these little houses, and we'll see how that goes. For the windmill, I want quite a rough bottom and working way up to quite a soft top. So I'm going to be using this gradient. A gradient is a really nice way to add some variation into what will end up being quite a flat wall. And this is the basic structure of the windmill. As you can see, it goes from the harsh cobblestone to the very smooth mud, and right now it is looking a little bit bald. But that is purely because I haven't put the sails on. When you're making stuff like windmill sails, you've got to think about the shape. I want mine to curve because normal windmill sails just aren't fancy enough. So windmill sails go out in sort of a cross shape, and it's always good to find a reference image online to base your shape off of. And as you can see, we've got kind of the curved shape of the windmill. The white, of course, is the sail, and then, of course, the wood is the actual arm. I'm just going to repeat this 3 more times in the X shape, and that should be a windmill. With all 4 sails on, this is looking more like a windmill. Now all that's left to do is put in some of the decor and the way down. I'm definitely feeling there should be some sort of lift system here. This looks like quite a nice slope for a lift system, especially if we're bringing carts full of wheat up to the windmill. They're going to need somewhere to go. Nobody's going to want to drag those up. So let's build a sort of lift system. And there we have our little grain production area with a windmill. We've got a small lift, the path goes to the barn, and the grain silo. And of course, a little cart for carrying all of our wheat. And also today we built this little stable and started to add more of the mushrooms around just to give the place a little bit more of a colourful fantasy feel. But I think that's it for me today. I've built quite a bit. There's a bed on that roof. There's a bed on that roof. I've built several things in this farm all at once, and I might be getting ahead of myself. So if you enjoyed the video, leave a like, comment, subscribe, the whole ordeal. And don't forget to tell me what you think this farm could use. Yes, I know the hills are bare. I'll get there. And as always, I'll see you in the next one. Bye.